So we've been working on factoring for the past couple of days. So we're going to practice. Let's see what you got. 2b squared minus 9b equals 3b squared minus 4b minus 14. I'm going to be solving this equation. Now, your first step is what? To get everything onto one side. Now, we're always focusing on this equal sign, and we want everything on either this side over here with these numbers or on this side over here. It's really your choice. I think the best method right now would be to move everything from this side to this side. So that's what we're going to do. So we subtract 2b squared from both sides. And then we're also going to do the opposite of our negative 9b, and we're going to add it. You can do this into two steps. We're going to save a little bit of time here and just add these together. So we've done the opposite, which cancels both of these out and gives us absolutely nothing on that side. And what does that equal to? Well, we've got a 3b squared minus 2b squared. It's only going to give me 1. So I can write it with a 1b squared, but I'm going to write it with a b squared because it's implied that there's a 1 here. Now, we've got a negative b, and then we're adding 9 to it. So that's going to give us a positive 5b. And we're not doing any math with the 14, so we just bring it down. Now, normally, as we've been learning, we're going to factor it. So we need that double bubble effect, as we've learned. And remember, it's important that we're always keeping it equal to 0, because we are going to have to solve to get some actual answers. So we have to come up with two numbers that multiply together to give me 14. And if we're going to list them off, obviously 14 and 1. It also gives me 7 and 2. So these are our two numbers that we can, or two factors that we can choose from that's going to multiply together to get 14. But when we FOIL it back out, they need to add together to be 5. So we're going to separate our b squared, put b on both sides. Then we need to choose, is it 7 and 2 or 14 and 1? Usually I like to look at it as what ones are closest together, have a current difference of 5, the number in the middle that we're looking for. And that's actually going to give us 7 and 2. After we've established what numbers we're going to use, we have to figure out what one is negative and what one is positive. We're looking for a negative 14 and a positive 5. So that's actually going to give me two negatives. Oh no, one negative, so a positive 7 and a negative 2. Positive 7, because it's a positive 5. When we add, we need to make sure that our larger number is the number that we're trying to get to. So then from here, we make our t-chart. B plus 7 equals 0. B minus 2 equals 0. Then we solve. Subtract 7 from both sides. These cancel out. B equals a negative 7. And then we add 2 and add 2. That gives us B equals 2. These are our solutions for our quadratic equation that we were given up here. Now, from there, we're going to try another one. Let's see if we can do it with this one too. So I've got 12 equals x squared plus 6x. Go ahead and pause this video and see if you can solve this by factoring. You probably noticed that this cannot be factored out. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to solve it together and see what we get. So we're going to move everything from one side to the other. That's going to cause me to subtract my 12. It's going to give me 0 equals, and we just rewrite everything. X squared plus 6x minus 12. If we were to factor, keep it equal to 0, What factors give me to 12? We've got 12 and 1, 3 and 4, and 6 and 2. Now if we're looking at this, all of these will multiply together to give me 12. When I FOIL them back out with my x and my x, and I take my inside and my outside, am I going to get to 6 if I use any of these numbers? Most likely not 6 and 2, because I've already got my 6 there. 3 and 4, when I FOIL them back out and add, I get 7, so that can't be it. And then 12 and 1, that's not going to get me to 6. So what do we do now? Here's where we're going to incorporate a new method of solving this equation. So we're going to rewrite this. I'm going to start fresh. So I got 12 equals x squared plus 6x. Now this new method is called completing the square. And there's really only one equation that you're going to have to know for this. You're going to need to know the standard form for a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? We need to identify what exactly our variables are for a, b, and c, because we're going to be focusing mainly on the b. So we're going to rewrite this. We got to get everything on one side, so we subtract the 12 on both sides. X squared plus 6x minus 12 equals 0. Always keep it equal to 0 because these are equations. So let's identify our a. If we're looking at the standard form, our x squared term is going to be our a value, and it's implied that there's a 1 there. Now, our b value is 6, and our c value is a negative 12. Now, wouldn't it be super awesome if we could just add a magic number in here that would help us factor, make it a little bit easier to factor? We get to with this process. So, focusing on the b, we need to establish what b is. B equals 6, okay? Then we need to know what half of b is. So b over 2 equals 6 over 2. And 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. Now, completing the square, we're going to square our b term. So we've got b over 2 squared equals 3 squared, which gives me 9. Now this 9 is our magic number. That's what we're going to call it. Our magic number. It's going to allow us to put it into this equation right here to complete the square. Now, it's super important to focus on exactly where we're putting this 9, because we're going to need both a negative and a positive side, because what you do to one side you have to do to the other. So, x squared plus 6x plus 9 minus 12, we just brought that down, equals 0. These right here are our magic numbers. Technically, when you put them together, they give you 0. But this is going to allow us to break it down into a trinomial, which is easier to factor. So, we're going to put some brackets around our trinomial that is easy to factor. Now, 9 can be broken up into 9 and 1, 3 and 3. So if we were to factor it, we would have x, and both are positive, so we'd be adding something. Now, these are the same numbers. So we can write it like this, which is absolutely correct, or isn't this the exact same thing as this? Exactly. So can't we just put x plus 3 squared? Because that's saying that I'm multiplying x plus 3 by x plus 3, which is the same thing. So then from here, I'm going to combine my other terms that I can combine. So my negative 9 minus 12 gives me a negative 21. And then we keep that equal to 0. Now, this we've completed the square, but we need to find our solutions like we did up here with the factoring. So we need to get the x by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our 21 to both sides, because we're trying to separate it. So we've got to move it from this side over here to where our 0 is. So that gives us x plus 3 squared equals 21. Now our next process is trying to get rid of that squared. So what do we do to get rid of a squared? We take the square root. Take the square root of that side and this side. When we take the square root of this side, we have to remember that plus or minus the square root. Okay? So this square root sign here gets rid of that squared, gives me x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 21. Now we get to radicals. Radicals are super fun. As you can tell with my sarcasm, this is a process. So we need to break down our 21 because it is not a perfect square. So I'm going to rewrite this. 21. What are our factors of 21? Remembering that we also have to have 1 be a perfect square. So I've got 1 and 21. It can't be 2 because it's an odd number. I got 3 and 7. 4 is not going to work. 5 is not going to work because it doesn't end in 0 or 5. 6 isn't going to work, and then that brings us to 7. So these are our only factors of 21, and neither of them are a perfect square. 1 is, but it still gives us radical 21. So this is in simplest radical form. Now if we're trying to get x by itself, we subtract the 3, subtract the 3. I'm going to rewrite this up here. So we've got x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 21. And this right here is your answer for factoring out 12 equals x squared plus 6x. Now this next one here I want you to try on your own. So pause this video after I write it down and try it on your own. See what you get. 4x squared minus 40x plus 94 equals 0. Now this one here is going to start off as a GCF. And if I'm looking at my x squared and my x term, my greatest common factor is going to be 4. So now I need to rewrite it, and as we've learned, the 4 needs to go outside the parentheses. Now, if I was to look at each of these x terms as if I had just divided them by 4, dividing by our GCF, that would give me x squared minus 40 divided by 4 gives me 10. X plus 94, close parentheses, equals 0. Now from here, we need to find what our A, B, and C terms are, looking at our new equation. So x squared term is our A also, gives me a 1. B is a negative 10. And C is 94. B is the helper of our magic number, so we establish B equals negative 10. B over 2 equals negative 10 over 2, which is negative 5. Negative 10 divided by 2. And then B over 2 squared equals negative 5 squared, which gives me 25. Alright, so we add our magic number back in. So I got 4x squared minus 10x. Here's where we put in our magic number, our positive magic number, 25, and our negative magic number. Bring down our last term there, 94, close parentheses, equals 0. We find our trinomial. There's 1, 2, 3, right there, leaving that negative sign on the outside. So if I'm trying to find the factor of this, and we know it's going to be a squared factor, so we can do x. It is a negative when you add, positive when you multiply. It's going to give me a negative 5. 5 times 5 gives me 25. When I FOIL it out, I get 10, negative 10. All right, close parentheses squared. Put my 4 on the outside. We haven't done anything with it, so we just keep it there. Negative 25, positive 94 equals 0. Oh, we still have parentheses in here. So, need our brackets around the next one. And here is where I am going to, oops, I need to be out here. Here's where I'm going to now distribute the 4 to. So 4 times x minus 5 equals 4 times x minus 5 squared. Scout, stop licking the turtle tank. And then 4 times a negative 25 gives me negative 100. And then I bring down my 94 equals 0. I can combine these now. Gives me 4x minus 5 squared minus 6 equals 0. Now from here, got to get x by itself, plus 6, cancel out, rewrite. It's minus 5 squared equals 6. We're still trying to get x by itself, but we can't do anything with this squared yet because we have to divide by 4 on both sides. So x minus 5 squared equals, this division here cancels it out. 6 divided by 4 is not fun math, but it can be simplified. We can divide both of them by 2. And 6/4 reduced to 3/2, which comes over here. 3/2. Now we can take our square root, don't forget the plus or the minus. So we've got x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. Add the 5, add the 5, x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. And that is our answer. It can be written like this, or you can separate it into 2, because this right here in the middle, this plus or minus the square root, just means that I have both of these equations. So they'd be written like this. X equals 5 plus radical 3 over 2, or x equals 5 minus the square root of 3 over 2. Either one is completely fine. Alrighty. For the rest of the class period, I'm going to need you to grab the worksheet completing the square, and you're going to work on these 5 questions independently. Once you're done, hand it in, grab your homework sheet, which looks like this. This formula right here is super, super important to learn, so make sure that you memorize it because I'm going to be quizzing you on it tomorrow. Have a good night.